Welcome to the Early Night Show with Anway Pramanik.
Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you've tucked yourself in. I hope you're relaxing right now. I hope you are spending this moment with yourself and with those who you find the most intimate in your life. I hope you're using this moment to be yourself, not have to put on that mask anymore, which we all have to usually put on when we go out and face the world. At least I know I have to. So here's hoping that you have a full belly, you're warm, it's not too cold, it's just the right thing, right temperature. You're in the company of yourself or the people who you find the most intimate in your life. And you are mask off, bare, just yourself. It's good to be back. One of those things that I tend to face with a lot is a lack of momentum in the things that I need to do in my day to day, apart from rather, let me rephrase that again. I find it very hard to keep a consistent momentum on things where I'm answerable and deliver only to myself, as opposed to an organization or a company or a boss or something like that. So whenever it comes to my own projects where I have my own deadlines, my own timelines for myself, I usually let go of that momentum. And that's something as simple as a routine to stay fit, a routine to learn new things, maybe read a book, at least 20 pages of a book a day, maybe like build a cold shower routine, cook food routine, eat a breakfast routine. Small things, tasks that I need to hold myself accountable to, I often fall short and fail in, at least in the momentum of. So, usually, what would always happen to me is I'd get very demotivated and disappointed by it, very self critical, and maybe reached this conclusion. You saw how my energy was so pumped up. That's the anxiousness of being away from the mic, the podcast. And if you remember the previous podcast, I spoke about how you have to jump between the roles, know how to switch on and off the masks. I need to be able to switch on this early night podcast mode of myself anytime, just like that. So getting back, it's this tendency of not being able to maintain the consistency in these tasks where I hold myself accountable, something I've struggled with. And the moment I fall short and fail, the next thing that happens is I get demotivated, very upset, self-critical, immediately start self-victimizing myself. And the next step is to try and run away, escape, or detach myself from this world, whether through some video games, drugs. Not that I'm against any of these things, I love all of these things. But it's just that it becomes very easy to use it as an escape mechanism. That's when I think I start mindlessly doing these things, like mindlessly gaming without even enjoying the game, just because I'm probably escaping from some bullshit argument or something that I failed at or some task which I couldn't hold myself accountable to. So, these things can demotivate you, and that demotivation then leads to anxiety build up. At least that's what I feel. And then that leads to you doing things which you otherwise wouldn't do. So I quite strongly believe that, or rather I've always had this philosophy in my life, that when you are down, you take the time out, stay down, stay in the mud, enjoy the mud, learn to become a master of the mud. It's so difficult for me to keep my energy on this podcast level, but I will try my best. So, yeah, as I was saying, escape mechanisms which then lead you to not pick up these new things, which then demotivates you and leads you to do certain things. Or at least for me, that's always been the case. And I've always believed it is right for me to take a moment back, like take a step back, revel in the dirt, revel in the mud, be one with the darkness, and then emerge from it. Be one with those negative thoughts, because that's part of me. Be one with those evil, sad, depressive feelings, because that's part of me. Fully acknowledge it, accept it, and I think that's when you'll, or at least I, truly emerge from the darkness. And this is something that I kind of experienced during an acid trip once. I used to be very scared of the darkness as a young adult. I was super into these anti-Christian stories, demons, pagans, supernatural stuff. And I used to watch a lot of these horror films. And because I get carried away very easily, I start visualizing and imagining very easily as well. So you can imagine how terrifying the darkness must have been for me after watching a horror movie. And most of the time I used to be quite alone. So if you are someone who's loves watching horror movies, but after watching horror movies, it's not a night you can sleep for like the next week, but you still love that, I'm just the same as you. It's amazing how we work, right? So anyways, I was always very scared of the darkness. And this one time I was in Kodaikanal with a bunch of friends, I think like the 8-9 of us. And I remember that that evening I was under the influence of I think 6 or 7 different psychotropic and hallucinogenic items like LSD. I was on Datura, that's the local wildflower, that psychotropic wildflower that grows. I was high on this local tobacco, marijuana, of course. We'd done some basic shroom tea in the morning. A friend of mine had bought some MDMA as well. This is like a good 5 years ago. Anyways, bringing the energy back down again. So I remember that evening. It's an amazing, fantastic, one of the best evenings of my life. 6 of us at between 11 p.m. and 1 a.m. or maybe a little bit more than that, like I think 10 a.m. to 1 a.m., 10 p.m. to 1 a.m. at night. We were taking a stroll around that main lake in Kodaikanal. We thought it would be like a half an hour walk, but that lake was massive. It took us a good 3-4 hours to do that. everything had shut down. We were like, how do we get back to Vatta, to where we lived? We had some of our main goods in Vatta Canal, but like all our essentials and stuff we were carrying in backpacks. So we said, okay, we'll figure something out. And while we were circling around this lake, we noticed the Datura flowers. And I handpicked like 20-30 of them. So this is when me and my brother, we popped half and half of a blot. Quite strong. So I'm visualizing and stuff like that. So in the middle of the experience, I remember one of our pack leaders who had a home in Kodaikanal. He's like a Bangalorean, but a localite. You could say like a spiritual localite of Kodai. He's like, come, let's go. And as we are walking up, I remember that we just go into like these, I wouldn't say woods, but slightly hilly area. Very mild forest. Like the trees are like 3-4 meters away from each other type of a thing. Suddenly we see like this big mansion, and it was the same mansion that we had gone the previous afternoon to pick up mushrooms, but we had taken the back road or the other side of the mansion, which had a main roadway that opened up to the other side of the hill where the main road continued. So we basically crossed the lake, went to the other side and climbed up from there. So it was very weird. Now it was pitch dark, and I remember that we enter this mansion like thing, and you've seen how those scary mansions are in those scary movies. It's just the same. There's only one light on in the hallway, and as we enter this, we see there's 2 chowkidars sleeping somewhere inside, like on their chairs, and we're like, cool, perfect, there's human beings here, at least it's not possessed. But the rest of it was just dark, just pitch black. Like if you turn off all the lights in your room, look and close your eyes, and then try to visualize your room, that's the kind of dark it is. But then as we were walking, there were a bunch of so it was like a hall. The house was on the right, the left was the veranda. As you're walking through the hall, there are these windows to our right which have all been covered with newspapers. Proper like a horror exorcist movie kind of thing. Like as if something has been sealed inside. And so you see how my mind works, right? My mind used to work even more intensely back then. So not all the time. It's not like I saw spirits and dead bodies everywhere, but at night and in the darkness. And I still remember that suddenly we all stopped walking, and I looked back, and the pack leader, he's peering in through a window, and there's a little light coming from there, and he's smiling. It's one of the best moments of my life. We open the door, go inside, and 4 or 5 days back we had met a pack of people there. They're sleeping inside on mattresses on the floor. They've got like not blankets, really duvets, like without any cover. So it's like as if it's been there for a while kind of a thing. That's the only room with some light on. And in the corner, there's a big kadai wok, a big massive wok kadai full of chicken gravy. I mean, not full, enough to feed 7-8 people. Next to that, there is another clay pot kind of thing, full of rice. And we were famished, right? We last probably ate at 6-7 in the morning just before we set out. And this is another story of Kodaikanal and that waterfall. Oh my god, amaze. Oh. Anyways, so now I still remember like I'm tripping and I started eating the chicken curry, and it's probably one of the most delicious. It had like that sweet Jeera, Bengali, Bihari, Jharkhandi kind of a flavor in it. Because one of the people who was in that group, Ziko Da, if you're listening, congratulations on your wedding. It's been a while, I know. So Ziko Da is someone I traveled to Nepal with during my 2 months. It's another story again. Anyways, so we're all in this room now, and one of the boys who was sleeping in that room already, he pulls out a baggie, pulls out a notebook, pulls out like some small lump of white powder, starts cutting it up. It's like welcome home boys kind of a thing. So that evening I remember everyone's up. It's around 2:33 in the night. I step out of the room. I just want to be myself. If you're someone who's ever done lysergic, LSD, during your peak, when you're in a room with a lot of people, you know the energy is how it intensifies. Because you become like a telecom cable or a telecom tower, mobile tower, which everyone around you starts connecting to. So it's very taxing. So yeah, I stepped out. It's pitch black. I walked down the hallway and I reached this one section where there's a right turn into the dining room, like abandoned dining room with one of those long tables, from those old movies, and chairs on either side. And I don't remember if there was a chandelier, but that's the kind of a setup it was, that Om Shanti Om kind of a thing. And just ahead, there was another small hallway, but I couldn't see what was on the other side. It's pitch black. But it almost looked as if darkness was pouring out of that hallway, like the entire house or the entire universe was dark that night because of the darkness that came from that room. It was absolutely terrifying, that hallway rather. So immediately I started getting these goosebumps. My gut instinct is like, take a step back and let's go into the dining room instead. So I go to the dining room, slightly more relaxed atmosphere. I think that there was a moonlight inside because I could see the shapes and outlines of the table and stuff like that. And that's usually possible only when there's a little moonlight reflecting. So I remember that this is when I was really scared. Like if you watched the Blair Witch Project, towards the second half, how delusional and paranoid those two people get. It's exactly how I was. But what I did in that moment is, in that fear, I'm like, I can't pretend to be brave right now because I'm not. I'm an absolute terrified piece of flesh and bones. So I just lay down on the ground. I still very clearly remember that. I just lay down, I sleep, lay flat, my eyes open, arms stretched, like I'm literally exposing myself to the darkness. And I mentally say 5-6 things. I'm like, if you have to come now and prove to me that you exist. Darkness, demons, ghosts, whatever it is, the dark energies, bad energies, harmful energies, supernatural energies. This is the only time I'm giving to you to validate your existence to me. If you cannot harm me after this, you don't exist. This sounds like a big boast. I mean, you don't have to believe. You can take this whole thing as a fictitious experience. You can say, yeah, I'm making all of this up, I'm lying. As long as you're entertained by my story, that's all that matters. But yeah, the next step I remember is was the moment of the birth of, I would say, a lot of my modern philosophy of all human beings are possessed by the dark and our existence, the self-discipline rules, societal rules, cultural rules, all of these things exist so that we can limit this darkness or shackle this darkness. And I'm also reading this Berserk manga right now. And the whole concept of this Berserk manga is this character Guts, his exploration of his dark side, how he tames it himself. And that's another story. I will get to Berserk maybe in another podcast, maybe tomorrow. I've been wanting to do a podcast about content and content consumption. Anyways, coming back to our story. Gonna take a deep breath. Relax, because this is beautiful what happened next. You could say at that point of time, it felt like I was the Prince of Darkness or the evil one, the vampire, the Dracula. I felt possessed. Not in an evil way, but in the sense that it felt like the energy was just in my... It's actually my negativity which I was afraid of. It sounds very philosophical when I say it like that. But you could say it wasn't actually the darkness that I was scared of. It was the thoughts that the darkness created in my mind that I was scared of. So the moment I realized the darkness is just darkness, I started feeling like the Prince of Darkness. So that's when in my life I figured out that if you're someone who really has a lot of these moments of ups and downs, good and bad, happy, sad, if angry, non-angry, angry, calm, afraid, unafraid, then I would definitely recommend that you spend some time, just like you don't have to get so intense and lie down and under the influence of 7-8 other psychotropics in an abandoned mansion in Kodaikanal in the darkness and challenge the darkness. You don't have to do that. All I'm saying is accept it that at that point of time you are that. You are a coward. You are depressed. You are upset. Now, when I say depressed, I don't use it in the clinical depression term, but you know that you're upset. Your mood's off. You're angry. You're upset at someone. Accept it. Be in that moment. Feel that emotion. Embody it. Become the prince of that emotion. So that when it comes time to adapt the other side of it, or when it comes time for you to know that now I can take off my mask, or when you know that I have embodied that one-sided negativity of myself, that I truly feel is when you be able to take the steps to make your way out of it. You can't make your way out of it by running away from it, escaping from it. You can't make your way out of it by telling yourself that I have to distance myself from this, I have to isolate myself from this, I have to run away from this, keep this away from myself. I would say that become one with that thing, become the best at it, and then tell yourself, I've conquered it, but I don't need it anymore. Tell yourself, that I have taken the moment to delve in my deepest darkness. I have accepted that I'm a human being who's capable of having all kinds of emotions, not just the good ones, not just the happy ones, but even the ones that make me uncomfortable. Even the ones like right now, I'm feeling some discomfort because there's so much noise outside my room, which might be interfering with this podcast. But then at this point of time, that's why you might have realized that I took a 5-10 second break because I was in the middle of the podcast to get to the point because I got distracted. I got angry. I could have told myself, no, I'm not angry. It's just a reaction. But I was like, no, I was angry. I was annoyed. When you are shooting a podcast and telling others, I'm shooting a podcast, you expect them to respect that. But at the same time, they're also enjoying a football game. They're also made plans to be and watching that. So I will definitely not want to be a bummer. So I felt angry. I've delved into my anger. I jumped into it. Like right now, you can see there's noise, but I'm not distracted by it because I've come to terms that I'm getting angry because I'm so passionate about my podcasts. That's why I'm getting angry, because I'm so passionate about my podcast. But at the same time, do I have to be just angry? Or can I just tell myself, hey, this passion for my podcast can continue even if there's noise behind me? The passion for the podcast doesn't mean that it has to be perfect. It just means to be that I need to bounce back and do this podcast even after a long break. Get into the flow. When I don't want to do the podcast for 6 days or 5 days or whatever, I tell myself, no, fuck that, I don't want to do the podcast. Delve in that negativity. Become a master of, I don't want to do that podcast. And then tell myself, despite me being so comfortable having more 1 hour, 20 minutes more every day, which I'm not using to build the podcast, I can sleep earlier, smoke a joint earlier, not having to upload, record, change things, upload, see how it's on Spotify, share it, check the data. Instead of me having to do all of that, I can just chill for 30-40 minutes a day. But then, even in that lazy, I accept myself that I don't want to build these podcasts. My passion for building these podcasts is what drove me to this, to record again. To tell myself, yeah, it's very easy to be that someone who gets 45 minutes extra to do whatever they want. But my passion for podcasts is what drives me to come back here. So this was actually a multifold story. I'm pretty sure you must be at certain stages in your life where certain things that I've said right now might be connecting with you. Not all of it. And that's absolutely okay, and that's absolutely how it should be. The only thing that I wanted to say is when it comes to the darkness and the negativity, embrace it. Become one with it. When it comes to the bad things, the things you'd rather avoid, become one with it. Become the best at it. And then tell yourself, I don't need it. That is if even after you become the best at it, your body tells you, nah, you don't need this. This is not your thing. That's when you'll truly know where your soul and your purpose aligns. And not just you. I wouldn't want to say that it's something you will discover, but the moment I started delving with my darkness is the moment I realized that the entire purpose of life's journey is to try and create moments where the brightness of my soul, my existence, my purpose, my goodness will overcome the darkness that I was born with anyways. So, the only thing that I would like to say is, if listening to this some emotions or some thoughts or some memories of things you've been trying to keep inside have been coming out, I would say spend the next 10-15 minutes thinking about it. Feel the hate, feel the sadness, feel that emotion very strongly. Focus just on that. Focus on why you're feeling that. Who's causing you that? What's causing you that? What's not causing you that? And I think doing this really helped me find a little bit better way to manage myself in the day to day that I call life. I really hope this podcast was fun for you as it was for me. This entire podcast was an experience for me to experiment with the experiment that I told you about in my previous podcast about role playing. And at the same time, talking about how, as human beings, we shouldn't escape from our darkness and our negativity and our sad thoughts, but rather delve in it. Just like how the Gautama Buddha did, ran away when he couldn't face his emotions and thoughts when he saw the reality of the world. But after he was fed by that old lady or that lady on the street who found him starving, and after he discovered that I can't escape, I have to deal with it, I have to learn to embrace it, become the master of my negativity, I honestly feel that's when he truly started becoming himself. Thank you for joining me tonight. I hope that you too realize that your dark emotions are you and you embrace it. Work towards building a relationship with it. Thank you for joining in. I wish you a fantastic night ahead. Good night.